Shalom. These are some reflections about Tisha and the contemporary meaning and significance. Of course, it's the saddest day in the Jewish year. It comes every year, obviously on the 9th of Av, and it goes back to historical memories of the destruction of the holy temples on the same day of the year, but hundreds of years apart. First in the year 586 BCE by the Babylonians, and then rebuilt and then destroyed again by the Romans in 70 CE. It's the same day of the year when the failed rebellion against Rome in 135 and the last stronghold at Beitar fell. It's the anniversary of the expulsion of Jews from Spain. The ones that weren't killed or forcibly converted were expelled on the 9th of Av. And of course it goes back even in the Bible to the time when the 10 spies returned and gave such a pessimistic report that it dismayed the children of Israel. But what is the historic meaning? Well, obviously they were moments of powerlessness, and that's why these very strong empires were able to wreak havoc and kill so many Jews and destroy property. But the Jewish tradition, the biblical texts, the rabbis always looked internally. In fact, it's clear when Moses is talking about the sin of the spies, he talks about how it disheartened and dismayed. And the Haftorah for Tisha B'Av, the Shabbat before, Shabbat Chazon, is Isaiah challenging and talking about, alas, the Jews the Israelites who have sinned and not wreaked justice. And then, of course, in the Lamentations book itself, Echa, which is read about the sins of Israel and the horror of the devastation. But the rabbis in the Talmud gave other reasons. They had many sins of the children of Israel, the Jewish people, which led to the destruction of the first temple in their minds. But the one for the second temple I wanted to really explore with you, and that is the sin of Sinat Chinom, of causeless hatred. Now, traditionally, this is dealing with causeless hatred of Jew against Jew. In fact, the story was that the Vespasian and Titus, the emperor and general, who were sacking Jerusalem in the year 70, while the temple was being destroyed, were tempted to go in until they reminded each other the Jews will be infighting, and then it'll be much easier when they kill each other just to go in and mop up. And throughout the centuries, there were tensions among Jews. In fact, when Hasidut started in 1700, the non-Hasidic Jews, the Mitnagdim, excommunicated the Hasidim, and the Hasidim excommunicated the Mitnagdim. So there have been these struggles, but probably just as intense are the struggles today between the perceived threat that Orthodoxy feels towards the rest of Judaism. Now, it's not all Orthodox Jews, but the situation and the stories occur enough in the language, the vile language from some Orthodox Jews about non-Orthodox Judaism. And the attempt in the Knesset some years ago, pushed by certain ultra-Orthodox factions, to amend the law of return to deny the right of a Jew converted by a non-Orthodox rabbi to be considered a citizen, even in a time of persecution. Well, what prompted me to talk about this today is a story that I was told by a woman that I converted and her husband, who went to a Shabbat, walked into an Orthodox shul in Chicago, and there the man davened Shacharit. They were invited back to lunch, and the Orthodox rabbi at his house was probing to find out the background of the woman. And finally the husband said, well, she converted, and mentioned that she converted with me. And the rabbi then went into a diatribe about how my predecessor was a reformed rabbi, and conservative rabbis teach nothing but lies, and my wife, who converted with a conservative Beit Din with an Orthodox rabbi on the panel, well, she's not Jewish anyway. And he said, and to the woman, you're not Jewish, and the only way to be Jewish is to be Orthodox, and all they teach are lies. And sadly, I wish this were an isolated incident, but another man called me who had studied in our class and was considering converting with an Orthodox rabbi. He went to that same rabbi, ironically, and the day after I heard that first story, he called to tell me he had given up and he was going to convert with us because it felt like it was hopeless. And then we have the situation, a big story in the Jerusalem Post last week, about a rabbi, an Orthodox rabbi in Israel, who decided to revoke a woman's conversion because he didn't think she was observant enough years afterwards. I mean, this kind of, and the language and the feeling of Orthodox Jewry to the rest of Jewry is just, seems to me to be Sinat Chinom. Now, the rabbi at that Shabbat dinner table sinned in many ways. it's considered to be akin to murder to embarrass somebody in public, which he did, and to defame non-Orthodox rabbis the way he did. I've never met the man. He's never been in any of my classes. He doesn't know what I teach. And to say that, ad hoc, hominem attack like that, what's that about? It's certainly Sinat Chinom. Now, I'm not Orthodox because I believe Orthodox Judaism is based on false assumptions. Incorrectly, they believe that the Torah is completely written from God to Moses and given at Sinai, 100%. That's simply wrong. They completely discriminate against women. Women are not allowed to participate equally in their religious services. And I really deeply believe they don't understand how Jewish law has developed organically and how it's changed from the very beginning till today. However, there are many beautiful, wonderful things about Orthodoxy, and I would never tell anybody not to be Orthodox. We should take the best and leave the rest from all Jewish groups and celebrate what we have that is positive. But the diatribes coming from, not all, but some Orthodox quarters against the rest seems to be the same sin that caused, according to our ancient rabbis, the destruction of the Second Temple. Sadly, I wish this was just a Jewish problem, but it clearly is not. Think about causeless hatred to animals. What did animals ever do to hurt us? Then you have the celebrated football player, Michael Vick, quarterback for the Atlanta Falcons, who's now been indicted because of dogfighting. And the reports in the papers about what he condoned, the torture of animals, the murder of animals who didn't win a fight, if it's true, is just horrible and disgusting, and certainly another form of causeless hatred. We have a very specific sin in Judaism called Tsar Balei Chayim, which prohibits us from hurting animals unnecessarily. In fact, hurting animals at all, some people say, is a sin. I have another video on vegetarianism, which you might want to see. Besides that, we have many problems of causeless hatred among people. Some of the responses I get to my videos from anti-Semites are just mind-boggling. Thank God most responses are very positive, but gotten to see the kind of venom out there against Jews, when all we want to do is bring peace and God's ideas to the world, the unity of God. Think about Islamic terror. Now again, not all Muslims, but many Muslims who, according to polls, even 30% of Muslim men under 30 in America support and condone suicide bombing, according to the latest poll. And the amount of violence in the world caused by fundamentalist Muslims trying to persuade people through terror that their way is right. Or think about the Pope's recent statement that only Catholics can achieve true salvation, that all the rest of Protestants can't. Now what does that say about non-Christians? Not that the Pope is a hateful man, but what does that attitude lead to when you say only this group can achieve salvation and nobody else? That God doesn't love everybody else? You know, there's a sentence in the Torah portion this week where the Jews are saying, or in the Haftorah, that God doesn't love us. Well, God loves everyone. In fact, Conan O'Brien, a comedian's response to that Pope's recent statement that only Catholics achieve salvation is, the Pope is saying, God loves us all, but loves us more. Well, that's simply not true in our view. Gail and I went to the Baha'i building in Wilmette. Never been inside before, even though I lived in Chicago most of my life. Beautiful building. And Baha'i teaches about universal love and universal peace and equality, and it's very nice. I gave a video on this too. Until you start probing and find out that everybody should be unified, we should all believe in the one God. But, of course, the highest religion is theirs, and you should believe in their particular prophet who lived like 150 years ago, and all the other religions are kind of much less mature. I don't remember the exact word the guide used. It's Judaism alone, as far as I know, and all of these religions anyway, that says you don't have to be Jewish. If you're not Jewish, you should observe the 7 laws of the sons of Noah, and I have a video on that. But if you are Jewish, you should observe the commandments. Now, some people will say, well, Jews say they're the chosen people. Well, that shows a complete misunderstanding of the idea of chosenness, and I have a video on that. Not saying that Jews are better, but God selected Jews for extra responsibility, extra commandments as an experiment. So if you are Jewish, we have these extra commandments to observe. But if you're not Jewish, you can still achieve salvation. There's 7 laws of the sons of Noah. There's a video on that. That's what you have to observe. Be decent and honorable, and be just and nonviolent. Now, there's a time for anger. Interesting to read in the sports section that the Cubs had all these fights and ejections. And right after that, they've now become the hottest team in baseball. Somehow that little fighting brought about a passion to excellence. And maybe this is something really to get angry about, the causeless hatred in the world, and to do what we can to stop it. The Torah portion this week in Deuteronomy talks about how you have to offer peace. And the rabbis took on the way to conquer the Holy Land. And the rabbis deduced from that all the mitzvot we have in Judaism, all the commandments, you're not obligated to run after. When they occur to you, basically you should do them. But peace is different. Peace you have to pursue, be a rodef, continually look to make peace. So we need to be angry about the causeless hatred and to move forward aggressively looking for ways to make peace. And I'll finish with a little phrase that I love from this week's Torah portion, Deuteronomy, where God says through Moses, listen, you guys, you've been on the mountain too long, it's time to get off. You've had some wonderful things on this mountain, the commentators say. You've gotten the Torah, but it's time to get off the mountain, get moving to make the world not a world of causeless hatred, but a world of shalom. Shalom.